What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about some of the genres in video games that I avoid. With the big releases of 2023 just about to kick off, I thought it would be fun to do something a little bit different and instead talk about the games I don't really play at all. And generally speaking, these genres fall into one of two types for me. I'm either just not interested, or two, I'm really bad at them. And while I typically stick to my area of expertise, which is RPGs and all of the subgenres therein, in particular CRPGs and TRPGs, I am occasionally reminded that other genres do in fact exist. I just don't really play them. So with all of that said, let's actually start talking about some of these. Now, first up is one that's kind of been around a lot lately, and this is rhythm games. This came up primarily because Hi-Fi Rush was recently released, and much like other games in this genre, everything you do in the game is done in the manner of following a beat, and engaging with that system leads to better results. We've seen a few of these games released recently, Hi-Fi Rush, of course, Hellsinger, which looks a lot like Doom to me, as well as another one that I believe is called like Crypt of the Necrodancer. But the reason I avoid rhythm games is that I'm really bad at them. In order to play rhythm games, you kind of need to have rhythm. And while these games do often come with a sort of set of accessibility options, let's say, where they will put like visual cues on screen, that kind of thing, usually I find that these get to the point where I'm not really experiencing what the game had in mind. And while I could probably struggle my way through it, it just occurs to me that I'm not really enjoying this game the way that it was meant to be enjoyed, so I just generally don't cover them, as I'm just not good at them. That brings us to our second entry, and this is racing games. This is the kind of game where I can see the appeal, but it's just lack of interest on my part. While I like a nice car as much as the next person, I just don't care enough about the act of driving to really get into racing games, which is interesting because I do actually think they are pretty cool for what they're trying to go for. They have all these aspects of cars you can customize and everything, and I think the last racing game I really played was like Need for Speed Underground, and having all these ways that you can like tweak and change various cars and then race them, there is somewhat ironically a lot of almost RPG elements to it that I really enjoy. It's just given a veneer that I don't really care about, which is, racing cars. So in the end, they're not really something I have much of an interest in, but I can definitely see why people enjoy them. That brings us to our third entry though, and this is sort of grand strategy 4X games. Your Total War, Stellaris, Crusader Kings, etc., etc. There's a million of these. As it is, honestly, a pretty big genre at this point. But basically these games come down to ruling a kingdom in some manner, or controlling a society of some sort and leading it to victory against opponents. Now, the reason I don't really like to play these games is because of what the gameplay actually entails, which tends to be a lot of micromanagement around various systems, a lot of which comes down to running the day-to-day, so to speak, of a society, albeit at a higher level. And ironically, whereas I play games like Pathfinder, which are very rules-heavy and can be intimidating for people to get into, I feel that exact same way about grand strategy 4X games. I have no idea what's going on, and I have a feeling that even if I had learned the game to a point where I knew what was going on, it would just feel like tedium to me. Which is a feeling that makes me more, I guess, understanding of people who don't really want to deal with learning the rule sets of the games I play. Grand strategy games are simply my version of that experience. But that brings us to number 4 on the list, and this is just regular old fighting games. Now, I've played a few of these, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, but honestly, the gameplay just isn't enough to hook me. I can kind of see why people enjoy doing this, especially online multiplayer, where you're fighting against a real person in like tournaments and stuff, and the people who are really good at it are very impressive at what they can do, but ultimately it's just not something I enjoy, so I don't really play them, which is for the best because I'm not very good at them either, at least the few that I have played. And while some of them have taken that extra step of sort of adding backstories to all the various playable characters and fleshing out a sort of world to go with their games, ultimately whenever I play these, I just can't help but feel like wishing there was a bit more to it than just fighting one person in matches. So again, this just winds up being a case of lack of interest on my part, even though I can appreciate that some people really enjoy this, and some people are really incredible at these games. But nonetheless, not for me. That, though, brings me to my last entry, and this is basically puzzle games of any sort, be these adventure games like the more recent Monkey Island, or other types of games where the key, core of it is solving various puzzles. Because for me, when it comes to puzzles in video games, I don't necessarily have a problem with them, but best case scenario, they don't bother me. There's not really any puzzles that I genuinely enjoy. I am always at best very neutral about them, and at worst, they get very annoying. That said, I can see why they get added to games. I've met enough people who've really enjoyed these types of games to see the appeal. It's just not a genre that I've ever picked up, played, and been like, wow, that was incredible. Which is why I stick to genres that actually do give me that feeling, at least some of the time. But with puzzle games, there's just never really an opportunity for a game like that to impress me, because again, best case scenario, it's just very meh. Worst case scenario, it's incredibly annoying. Which I think is as sure a sign as any that those genres just aren't for me. That has been the list of genres I tend to avoid, and while I definitely don't think this will surprise anyone on the channel, as these games don't really make appearances here at all, I have been talking about it a little bit here and there in comment sections and stuff, as announcements for these types of games have been made, so I thought it would be an interesting subject to take a look at. But that said, as someone who plays a genre of games that is honestly pretty niche by itself, meaning a lot of people don't play it, which is to say CRPGs, especially the more isometric older ones, I definitely know that that's a two-way street. So by all means, let me know down below genres of games that you really love and enjoy, or just genres you yourself avoid. But either way, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but more than anything, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.